and addresses some of those issues.
Order. The Honourable Tony Roll.
Mr Speaker, this part of the mixed ownership bill puts in the law a number of the very important features of the whole mixed ownership model, particularly the 51% legislated guarantee that the government will retain 51% of all shares in the state-owned enterprises, together with the 10% cap on any other shareholder. This stands in quite strong contrast to the rules around the sale of state-owned enterprises when the previous Labor government sold $9.5 billion of public assets in the 1980s. $9.5 billion. There was never a requirement of a 51% government ownership. They sold 100% to the Americans and Fay Rich White. They paid 100%. They sold 100% of the Shipping Corp. They sold 100% of Petrocorp. They sold 100% of everything to the highest bidder, and ordinary people never got a look in. Under this legislation, we're maintaining 51% New Zealand control as a minimum owned by the government and a 10% cap on any other shareholder. The important point behind all of this legislation is the need to help our country control its debt. And this is part of a wider plan that this government has in order to help control our nation's debt and grow and protect our economy in the years ahead. With the world economic climate as it is, this government inherited a national debt of around $8 billion. And our role to protect our economy from the sharp edges of recession, that debt has grown to $52 billion today. It's projected in the next 2.5–3 years to grow to $72 billion. $72 billion. We must control our debt. If you look around what's happening all around the world, in Europe and the United States, Canada, countries that don't control their debt get themselves into significant trouble. If you look, for example, at Portugal, whose overall debt, public and private, is remarkably similar to where New Zealand is in that zone, Portugal, Ireland, Greece, Spain. Portugal, for example, has announced, I think, an 11% cut in its public health budget. This is what happens when countries let their debt get out of control. And that's the reason why this government has a plan which includes freeing up the 49% of a range of state-owned enterprises, keeping control at 51%, 10% cap on any other shareholder, and to take those proceeds to put into a future investment fund, which will then allow us to have resources to grow our economy, grow our investments, without having to grow our debt. That is all at risk. If the government changes in 2014, we know that the party opposite has said buying back these assets is not off the table. That's what they said on television last week. Buying back these assets is not off the table. If it's not off the table, it's on our debt, because that's the only way that Labor could buy these back in the unfortunate incident, and that's why 51% government control is so important and 10% cap on any shareholder. That is because we need to make sure that we have this as a part of our plan to protect our economy, control our debt, and move forward in the future. The government includes a Treaty of Waitangi clause. The government undertook a very, very lengthy iwi consultation process of about 10 hui up and down the country. Hundreds of people attended. I attended a number myself, and it gave Māori an opportunity to talk about what interests and concerns that they had. And as a result of that, in discussions with our confidence and supply partner, the Māori Party, we did translate into the legislation the treaty clause in that legislation without requiring it, though, on the private shareholders involved in this company. So we did that quite openly. This legislation is gone to a select committee. There's been no urgency with respect to this. We've been quite upfront in our commitments. And when the Prime Minister announced in January 2011 that we would have a 51% minimum shareholding and for the government and a 10% cap on any other shareholder, this was the first time a government had actually campaigned openly on the sale of part of state assets. Because when $10 billion was sold in the 80s, they never told anybody.
I'm calling Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise to speak on part